That's how I like to approach the idea of overcoming objections, is to build a sales process that takes me down to the fewest objections possible and have those handed out, rehearsed, practiced, ready to roll. Hello, everybody. So we're going to talk today a little bit about 6 objections that you face in sales, which, I think that even the best salespeople have to embrace objections. And I've always been trained that maybe objections is a negative word, and instead we want to think about embracing someone's concerns. But I got to be honest with you, I find that closing ratios go way, way up when agencies focus on a defined, stepped sales process where we rehearse, we understand what to say at each point. And so many agencies, unfortunately, as opposed to having a sales process, what they have instead is a quoting process. And a quoting process is, let me get the underwriting information, get you the quote, deliver the quote, and you say yes or no. Sales process, on the other hand, is far more in depth. It's how do I make the client feel? How do I find the most opportunity? How do I pre-qualify? It adds the other layer. And really, you do need a marriage of both. But I find that there's a little bit of a rub factor. There's some friction points on how much underwriting we do up front, how much we do underwriting do pre-bind. And a lot of people have very passionate concerns about this. And I like to say, we have to have a frictionless sales process. The more friction points, the less likelihood to close. And leads are hard to generate. People are finicky today. And if we have somebody on the phone, we need to keep moving forward. There's nothing that says in insurance that we can't say stipulations to bind. So if somebody doesn't have XYZ to give us, we can say a stipulation to bind is X. But I find that whether it's commercial lines or personal lines, we need to rehearse a lot of these challenges so that it does become more fluid and formal. Instead of just taking out, I call it the ye old quote sheet, because that's kind of how I feel about it. I do think more and more people need to go digital. I do think we need to embrace raters, both personal lines and commercial lines. And I understand that the commercial side might be hard depending on your market profile, but it's getting better. And we need to keep an open mind towards that. And there's still a ton of agencies out there that we walk into that don't use a personal lines rater. There's a couple situations where I support that, but the vast majority, I think you have to use technology. Stop thinking it's going to rate for you. Start thinking it's going to integrate for you. If you get really good at it, it can rate for you, but don't blame the tool, blame the user sometimes. In order to minimize your objections, you need a sales process. And even still, you can minimize that. You still can get to a place where you still get objections, but the first step of any great sales process is the intro and building rapport. And a couple key things agencies need to do. One, understand your prospect is probably also shopping other agents. And even if they're not, you want to have that mindset of, I have to be so impressive that they don't call anybody else. That's a mindset you can condition yourself into that then works brilliantly. I think you also want to find out how they found you. If it's a referral, we want to thank them. We have to find out why they're shopping today. Other than price, why are they shopping today? When are they going to make their decision? What are all the policies that they have? Do you want them to find maximum discounts? And you need to be building up that rapport. And I think one of the things we really get tripped up on in insurance is saying no to people. And we face this question whenever I speak publicly of, how do I say no to a lead? How do I break up with a client? And the reality is, how you say no to a lead is just, hey, based on what you shared, I don't think that we're going to have the best market for you. I recommend you call ... Maybe it's a non-standard shop in town. Maybe it's progressive, whatever it looks like. But the idea is that you have to honor and spend your time with the best people. I can't tell you enough, man. And I think sometimes owners are disjointed from this a tad bit. And our reporting isn't 100% there yet. You can dive to the metrics and see it, but you have to imagine that maybe a client that's more of a, I call them a D, do not resuscitate, might call in every month to pay, have late payment fees, be price sensitive. It's a monoline policy. And we look at that. Well, gosh, gee golly, we just spent, even if you say 3 hours a year on a monoline $800 auto policy, if we do the math on that, we're not making any money, we're losing money. But it's even worse because when you say yes to something, you say no to something else. So by you spending 3 hours on that one client, we say no to my $7,000 or $8,000 personal lines package or commercial account that we could be nurturing and keeping happy. So we fed the monster here, but a 10-minute, 12-minute, 15-minute renewal call here would have gone great. And this is where I get frustrated because agencies say I don't have time to make renewal calls. Well, fire that low-level client that's bogging your system down. So if it's a 10 minutes to take a payment, it's 2 hours. 3 hours is 15 minutes. So if you get the talker, say you're spending 3 hours on one client that's a monoline small policy. My renewal review for I think it's like 8 or 9 personal lines policies was 12 minutes. If you think about it that way, say it's 15 minutes by the time you prep up and do everything, right? In 3 hours, just doing some basic math, you could have contacted 12 of your best customers. What is a better use of your time? So don't have some governors up at the front so that way you can succeed. The next step of a great sales process is the sales interrogation or the underwriting interrogation, I like to call it. And we have to be super careful. We just built rapport. We've used our personal pitch. We've explained what an independent agent is, what our process is. Those are all things that go in that first lump. So now you get into the second part, and what we're looking at is a whole nother scenario. What we're now looking at is gathering the underwriting information. And this is where you need to think on your feet. I don't support asking people to send you deck pages unless you know that they have it in front of you or they could take it quickly. I do not want the other agent involved. I know in my experience, those deck pages can be wildly inaccurate. And honestly, we need to underwrite on our standards, not somebody else's. Now, is it great if they have it in front of you? Sure. It's nice to have, but it can't be your support system on a sale. Your next step is going to be to get all that information. And say somebody doesn't know the year of the roof. Say someone's like not sure about their payroll. You know what they can do? Estimate. And you can make a note and say, in order to buy, I'm going to need this going forward. But you want to be thinking as you're getting the information, how can I get 4 policies, 4 and score? And then we're going to go into setting expectations. If you can quote over the phone, amen, sister, it'll give you the best closing ratio. It's the most efficient. You'll get to yes faster. If you can't, the next step is you have to set an appointment. No excuses. Not, I'll email you the quote. Stop getting in your own head. And this is where I say a lot of agents get screwed up is they think, well, they must want to see it. Maybe. But if I'm going to send them 4 policies and my next step is I want to send them options, so they say that they have options with us, I'm going to send them a whole lot of garbage and they're going to get overwhelmed. We want to send them the quote to get it off of our desk, where instead we need to set an appointment and go through with people. Screen share, huge. People are more used to Zoom now. Do the old-fashioned thing, have people come in. But when they're willing to honor an appointment with you, they're on the hook and you're most likely going to close it. So your work is becoming valuable then, not just something that we do to do. Also, quoting over the phone does have the highest closing ratio. Does it take some practice? Sure, so does everything. But if you can pop it into the radar at the minimum, you saved yourself a lot of time, effort, and energy. We like the quote sheet layout. That's just muscle memory. If you just started insurance new and you didn't know any different, you would just figure it out. Don't let our mental limitations or our need to try to make things as easy and comfortable as possible identify the fact that I'm practice quoting. I'm letting people off the hook. I'm not going to get them back again. All of it's garbage if we can't get it to work for us. The next step is how do we present that quote? Now, I don't think this is ever trained anywhere. And this is something that I'm passionate about is getting on, explaining, hey, I've been able to solve your major concerns. I have a really great quote for you. And then talking about the company and what the features are of that company. And then going ahead and showing them what you have in 2 to 3 different options. People love options, and it's a huge sales strategy to give people option A, B, or C. If they like you, then they can work with you on an option. Give them one quote, it's take it or leave it. And oftentimes we aren't quoting everything. On personal lines, that could be home, umbrella, life, auto. Maybe that's the top option. Maybe you're trying to quote what they have now because I hate the word apples to apples. It drives me nuts. There's no such thing. There's just no such thing as apples to apple. Every carrier has different endorsements and features. What you're talking about is quoting the same liability limits that they had currently. And that's great. But what if those are garbage? Or what if, I don't know, they're coming to you as their expert. And when we just use somebody else's work, or you want to say, well, you're underinsured here. Well, how about you just tell people? Because if they didn't know, okay, great, I was underinsured. I never needed to use it. Obviously, it wasn't that important to me. You need to instead educate people so they bond to you. The big bottom line that we all need to focus on is that presenting that quote with option A, B, or C in different tiers. For $8 more a month, we can add an umbrella. Just keep that going. And you will find that people are like, oh, I like option B. That's great. Now you can close, which is the final step, which is asking for the close. And I think that if we have this strong sales process, what ends up happening is we address people's objections as they're coming. Drives me nuts. When we do secret shopper calls, we find that almost 90% of our people who are secret shop have not, and I'm being very upfront, have not discussed what an independent agent is. Now, why is that such a challenge? If I'm a school teacher or my husband works in elevators, if that's the case, can we all be honest? Like, he doesn't know what an independent agent is. He just thinks he's coming to you for insurance. We don't tell them that we're going to go shop. We don't tell them that we've got options. We don't tell them that we work for them. how can they buy that? Or if my price comes in close to somebody else's, they might say, oh, Farmers, I know that name. I'm going to go with them. We need to be constrict very upfront. This is what I'm talking about with objections. When all these steps are rehearsed with steps, what to say, we miss out because we got off this muscle memory and we cut corners, or we've just never been trained. We've been trained that that quote sheet is what we need more than getting to know the agent or getting to know the client and promoting ourselves. And I know the pushback, well, everybody just wants to get a quote fast. There is no stopwatch, people. It's not, you have 8 minutes. That's us wanting to get off the phone with the person. That is us. If I'm enjoyable and having a good time, I will sit on the phone with the person. If it's horrible and just cut and dry, no, thank you. I'm out. So we have to really structure our sales process around this. Now, if we talk about price upfront, what's your budget? What are you paying? What are your expectations? You limit the price budget. If we tell them our process upfront, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to gather the information we need. I sometimes gather more information so I can maximize your discounts. Is that okay? And then say, what we're going to do is I'm going to work it up because I'm going to go get you a couple options and we're going to shop the top companies. It's important that we get back on the phone so I can review that with you and I'll send you everything after. But oftentimes there's a few tightening up underwriting questions so we can maximize your discounts. I won't take too much of your time, just 10 or 15 minutes so we can walk through that. Then they know, now we're overcoming that email me the quote. We also ask the question, have you talked to any other agents? Yes, I've got 2 other quotes outstanding. Great. Now I know what the game is. And I can say when they say, I'm waiting for other agents, well, have they gotten back to you? When do you think you're going to hear? We did this right now. I've shopped these companies. Are you sure you want to delay? You need to be thinking about all those scenarios that I feel are so important. When you build your sales process, you can take these top 6 objections and then implant them in so you have agreement. Otherwise, when you talk to my spouse, well, if you're setting an appointment, now we can say, would you like your spouse on there? Because you've talked about the decision makers. So when it comes up later on as a potential blow off, it's more like, well, I need to talk to my spouse. Okay, oh, I'm sorry. I thought that you said that you were going to be the primary decision maker. Are they available right now? Do you want me to hop on? Do you want me to send a video? Is tomorrow good to talk to them? You start working around those objections because you had something up front. I'm very passionate about this because I think so many objections can be just blown out of the water. But I'm going to end with this. Our top objection that we get today is ghosting. And ghosting is you do all the work and you never hear from them again. I'm going to tell you ghosting is higher when you email the quote because they'll look at the price and they may not understand what you're showing them and they make a bad decision. Ghosting also happens. You have all this information. You can't get back in touch with them. Are we emailing them? Are we texting them? Did we just one email, a phone call? Did we just email them and it went to junk or spam? Ghosting can be avoided with the right processes and procedures. Ghosting happens more when we don't have the processes and procedures or we treated the client like a quote sheet. We didn't treat them like a person and then a policy. We treated them like a policy and they were on the conveyor belt. We gave them a quote process, not an actual sales process. I know I get a little fired up about this stuff. It's intentionally meant just to say that I want everybody focused on how to treat the customer because you can upsell, you can buy more insurance. And most importantly, your time is valuable. Don't spend time on the riffraff because you don't have a big enough sales pipeline and you can't I'm too busy to follow up with people, but we're going ahead and quoting garbage. We need to lay up our standards. I think in this marketplace, we have an opportunity to call our book and meet our agency standards. So that's how I like to approach the idea of overcoming objections is to build a sales process that takes me down to the fewest objections possible and have those handed out, rehearsed, practiced, ready to roll so that way you get those and you just know how to bob and weave around them, make it no big deal and close that sale because you're targeting the right people, not the wrong people.